Well, good morning, my little chicky monkeys. It is Saturday, and I'm doing this one a little bit earlier than Monday because on my way to work this morning, I started listening to a new podcast called Cryptic, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this, okay? But it got me thinking about some things, and it's going to lead into another little known facts from Stewart's Almanac. And this one's no moral, no lesson. It's just simply a story about me the night I was attacked by the Chupacabra. So I'm listening to this podcast, Cryptic, and I'm not so sure about this podcast itself. It gets me thinking all the way back to a lot of things, or maybe you don't know, I don't know how much your dad loves cryptozoology and cryptids and the paranormal and all that stuff like that, right? I'm a huge fan of things like the original Ghost Hunters and a huge fan of Josh Gates. Destination Truth was one of my favorite shows. Expedition Unknown is awesome. I love it. I love all that stuff, okay, but this goes back, circa 1995, back before we had Josh Gates on the air and we had Destination Truth and all that stuff like that, man. This cryptozoology and stuff of that nature was not talked about in mainstream TV, radio, or anything like that. It just was frowned upon. You were an oddball. You were a goof. Well, there had to be an outlet for it. And when there's a need, and somebody's going to fill it, right? So, intro, one of my favorite people in the world, Art Bell, God rest his soul. That man was a crypto god to me at the time. He was on the air from like midnight to 6 a.m. and he was the consummate radio man. Dude was amazing. But he took on the things that nobody would, man. He had the vampires on. He had the people who were werewolves on. Ghost hunters, time travelers, all kinds of stuff. It was wild. But again, it was midnight to 6 a.m. Hardly got to listen to him, But then around 1995, I took what was supposed to be a part-time job with the Austin American Statesman delivering newspapers. And I happened to take on one of the largest routes they had. I don't even remember the number. All I know is for 1995, I was pulling in over $1,000 a month for this one newspaper route. And that's a lot of money in 95. And once I did leave there a couple years later, the supervisors just kept calling me back because they can never get anybody to do what I did on that route. And they ended up having to break it into 3 different routes. Regardless, that's another story. But this was a very big route. Had several apartment complexes, and I had them all mapped out, how to run from building to building, and I had how many papers I could carry in my little sack and stuff. And I could just go up and throw the papers up the stairs. Not even running up the stairs, but I can hit the doors and get the paper right to their doors and everything. So this gave me the greatest opportunity to soak up as much Art Bell as I could. Man, it was awesome. I got to listen to him every single night because I left the house about 2 in the morning to go do this paper round. I did this thing for 2.5 years. Man, it was great. Some of the greatest stories and episodes, man. And I want you to think about that for a minute, okay? Taylor, you were a little bitty at the time. I was trying to bring as much money as I could. I was working so many jobs as I could. I was living on maybe 4 hours of sleep at night, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, doing this thing. So imagine the sleep deprivation and everything, right? Okay, so that starts to fuck with your mind, right? So here I am listening to Art Bell. Okay, so one of my favorite episodes. He took on the Chupacabra. Oh, man, it was great. He brought on experts, man, and they talked all about the creature itself and its migratory pattern, how it's come up from South America. And it was the last sighting at that time was like 7 days prior to this episode, and it was in San Antonio. That was right down the road. Yeah, and they talked about how this thing would hang out in trees, right? It would wait for its victims to walk underneath, and then it would pounce in the back of their neck and attack. Oh, it was so vivid. It was so awesome. It was a great story. So here I am, flash forward about 30 minutes later after listening to the storyline and stuff, and I'm out in this one big apartment complex, and I'm running from building to building, and I get between these 4 buildings, and there's a courtyard and stuff, and I'm running down one side of the courtyard, hitting the buildings, and it's pitch black, okay, and it's perfectly still, quiet. And I start trudging underneath this tree on the sidewalk, right under the tree. In the minute I'm under this tree, it happens. Fuck! Something was coming out of that tree. I damn near shit my pants. I jumped about 20 feet, grabbed a newspaper rolled up in both hands, and I turned ready to fight. But there was nothing there. My eyes are about the size of $50 as I'm looking around this courtyard trying to soak in as much light rays as I can to see. I see the tree, and all that's on my mind is that son of a bitch, a Chupacabra. Where's it at? And then I look right above the tree, and I hear this. I don't see anything still. Right above the tree, you notice an open window on a second story apartment. And then I just stand there for a second. And sure enough, yeah. Some dude was just sawing logs, man. He just happened to saw a log. I was right underneath his window. Scared, never letting shit out of myself. Oh, I still love thinking about that moment. Anyway, again, no moral, no lesson, just something I think is a pretty good story. The night I was attacked by the Chupacabra. Anyway, another little known facts from the Stewart's Almanac. I love you, kids. Bye.